Welcome back, Nail Queens. If you saw my video on Thursday, then you know that I promised you a filing, shaping, and buffing video. Today's video, I am going to show you my full in-depth process on how I file, shape, and buff my nails, and it's going to be real time, meaning it will not be fast forwarded, so you guys get to see exactly how long it takes me to file, shape, and buff one hand. Now to get started, I'm going to start working on my cuticle line. I have this thing called an ergo file by Bonafide Beauty, and it has a curved edge. This curved edge makes it really easy for me to just hook it on the cuticle area of my dip powder and just file it nice and round. I literally just hook it right there and go in circles until I get the round shape that I like for my cuticle area. And I repeat this process on every single nail. Now, if you don't have an ergo file, you can totally use a different type of file. I recommend like a really skinny metal file or a very worn out and seasoned 100/180 file, because you want something very skinny or something very worn out so that it won't hurt you, it won't damage your skin, it won't cut you. You do not want to use a sharp type of file that will hit your skin and cut you. When I'm happy with how the cuticle area looks, I dust everything off and I'm gonna move on and grab my hand file and focus on the free edge. So what I'm doing right now is flattening the free edge. When you dip, it does lose shape. Your nails are gonna look a little thicker, a little bulkier, and sometimes a little wonkier. So using a hand file is going to help you get that flat shape on the free edge. So what you're seeing me do here is taking my file and going up and down on the free edge. I'm trying to get that perfect, flat, not misshapen free edge. Sometimes when you're shaping and you think you're going across, you're actually going at an angle. So when I hold my file up and down like that, it really helps me get it. So now it's time to focus on the sidewalls and the free edge. I'm going to taper my nails. So what I do is where the nail no longer hits the skin, that's where I start my tapering. So right here on this side right here and on the other side, that's where I focus the taper. I don't focus it any further up on the nail. So I'm going to take my hand file and have it flat against the nail like this and then taper it. So I'm going to just curve it a little bit like this and then file a couple times and repeat that process on the other side. Sometimes dip powder also gets underneath, like right under there. So you want to make sure that that part underneath the nail is completely flat, level, and there's no dip powder that got on the underside of your nail as well. So that's another thing to focus on when you are filing the free edge and the sidewalls. So I'm just going to taper from left to right. You don't want to focus too much on one side. You want to equally do a couple strokes on one side and repeat that same pattern and strokes on the other side of that same nail. The reason being, you can file off a little too much and you can't add more back on unless you redo the whole process. So you just want to file a couple times on one side and repeat the same amount of filing on the other side. What I do now is repeat that same process on every single nail. So tapering in the sidewalls and checking the underside, you'll notice that here on my thumb, just on the right side right there, a little bit of dip got stuck underneath. So I'm just going to file that away before I start tapering that side of the sidewall. And I'm repeating every single process on all 5 fingers. So you notice how I did the cuticle area on all 5 fingers and then I filed the free edge flat on all 5 fingers. Now I'm focusing on tapering in the sidewalls and checking the underside of the nail to make sure there's no dip that got under there on all 5 fingers. Once all the free edge, the cuticle area, all the shaping parts are all done, then I move on to the buffing. But the reason I'm doing this in phases is so that I do the same movement over and over again on all 5 fingers. I don't want to completely file, shape, and buff one finger and then move on to the next nail and do the whole process all over again. I want to keep doing the same movement, like if it's kind of like an assembly line style. Right now I'm using a very worn out and seasoned hand file to bring down bulk around the cuticle area. This is not the same as what I was doing in the very beginning with the ergo file, where I was making the cuticle area round. that was towards the edge of the nail. This is on top of the surface to bring down any bulk right there to make the taper look nice and have like a nice side profile view of the nail. The first part with the ergo file was to get a top view, make that cuticle area look nice and round. Now this part is to make the cuticle area on the side view look nice and tapered and round. We're not done with shaping just quite yet. Now I have to inspect the top view from the top and the underside, and this one looks a little lopsided. It's a little taller on the left side, so I'm going to use my hand file and even that out and try to make it as flat and straight as possible. Moving on to buffing. So I'm using a sponge buffer from SNS. So what I do now is I focus just on the side wall, work my way to the cuticle area, and then I work on the right side wall. So I flip the buffer around and work on the right hand side. So I want to make sure my side walls and my cuticle area are nice and thin and smoothed out. And I repeat that process on every single nail. And this buffing block has two sides to it. So there's a smoother side and there's a much grittier side. The grittier side is great if you have like this nail I have right here. It's a little bit wonkier. Things didn't go as smoothly as it did with the red dip powder. So the rough side is great for debulking and smoothing out anything that might need some extra love. So I love that part of this dual-sided buffing block. And when I feel comfortable with the nail, I do also inspect down the barrel of the nail. So you see me looking at this angle to make sure one side isn't thicker than the other. That has totally happened to me before, where one side is just a lot higher than the other. It looks like a very weird mountain. The thumb is my favorite nail to buff. Maybe it's because it has the larger surface area, or because for me, my thumb seems to be the only nail that cooperates. Go figure, the one that's not really in photos. So I want to show you guys how you can really tell if something is smooth or not. So you have all this dust on your nail, right? Well, I recommend taking a rubbing alcohol wipe or just a wipe and saturate it with alcohol and just wipe the nail. And as the nail starts to dry, because the rubbing alcohol is drying, it's going to look a little dusty, and you can kind of see the grooves and see that it's not completely smooth and level. So that's how I personally know that I need to do a little bit of extra buffing work. And I did encapsulate these nails in clear. So I'm actually not buffing into my red color, I'm buffing into the clear dip powder that I have on top of the red color. If you guys are buffing into a color because you didn't encapsulate it in clear, do be mindful of that, because you can cause discoloration from buffing into the actual color. Remember what I just said about the rubbing alcohol? Well, I'm going to do it again just to double check, and I'm going to watch it dry. And you're going to notice that there's going to be obviously some dried spot from the rubbing alcohol, but you see the parts in that area that are red, that are darker red. That's because my buffing block is not hitting those regions. So that to me means that it's not completely smooth and level. So I'm trying to minimize as much ridginess or lumpiness that there possibly can be on the nail, and that's why I check it with the rubbing alcohol and let it dry and cause that little discoloration for a quick second, and that will really tell me when it starts to smooth out. Alright, the thumb has had some time to dry and the index is drying as well, but you see how there's fewer red spots on the center of the nail? That was the goal. I know I'm not going to get it 100% perfect and 100% smooth, but my goal was to minimize the amount of areas where my buffing block was not hitting the nail. So I'm moving on to the glitter nail, which is my ring finger. This is just a beast of its own. Glitter nails can be a little more difficult than solids are to file, shape, and buff smooth. And the reason being is because while you're buffing, you want to make sure that you're not digging into the glitter pieces because the glitter is technically silver. So if you file into a piece of glitter, it's going to turn silver. So my goal is to not discolor that glitter. So I have to be very mindful when I'm filing and buffing to make sure I'm not hitting any glitter, but I'm also trying to smooth out the surface as much as possible. So you'll see me just rotate back and forth between these 3 different tools here. I have my hand file, the buffing block, and I even have the smaller orange buffing block, which to me is like a mini little beast that really gets the job done. Alright, for the final bonus part, this isn't filing or shaping, but it's more so cleaning up. So I have this very thin, tiny glass file. It is extremely tiny, you guys, very precise. And I use this to get into like the nooks and crannies and corners where my nail really just kind of hid some dip powder. I consider this like kind of like getting food stuck in your teeth. You're getting dip powder stuck in the crevices of your nail. And eventually they'll come out, like if you keep applying cuticle oil, and they'll crumble out over the next following days, but I like to get rid of them immediately after doing a manicure. So this little glass file really helps me get into those small, fine areas that are hard to reach with any other kind of tool except for like tweezers, and it helps me push out the yuckiness. Like I said, it's like getting food stuck between your teeth. And once I'm happy with everything, I take this brush and I dust everything off to get any of those residues, those little things that are stuck there, get them out of the nail, make sure they're completely gone. And that's when I activate my nails for the final time before going into top coat. So right now I'm just taking rubbing alcohol to my nail before I go into my top coat process, and I'm not going to bore you with the top coat application. I did upload the video on this mani on Thursday, so I'll link it in the cards if you want to go watch the mani video from start to finish. The only thing it doesn't include is the filing, shaping, and buffing, which I just showed you guys in full detail today. So this is the end of the manicure. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope that it was helpful and informative. If it was, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you like this type of videos, be sure to subscribe because I have videos like this launching every single week.